The concrete exploded beside Thaddeus Kane's head as he dove behind the altar. Marble fragments peppered his face while automatic gunfire shredded the stained glass windows above. He rolled left, came up with his shotgun, and put 3 shells center mass into the closest attacker. The man flew backwards, crashed through a wooden pew, and lay still. "Benediction complete," Thaddeus muttered, pumping another shell into the chamber. This was his job. This was what the order paid him for. Thaddeus Kane, executioner first class, had just performed his 47th holy execution in 18 months. The target had been Marcus Gellhorn, a former priest who'd been selling consecrated communion wafers to drug dealers. The wafers, when ground up and mixed with cocaine, created something called Angel Dust Plus. Users experienced religious visions while their brains slowly dissolved. Gellhorn was dead. His bodyguards were not. Thaddeus sprinted down the center aisle as bullets chewed up everything around him. A chandelier crashed where he'd been standing 2 seconds earlier. He leaped over an overturned pew, slid across the polished floor on his knees, and came up firing. 2 more bodyguards dropped. The last one had taken cover behind the confessional booth. Smart. That thing was built like a tank. "You killed a man of God!" the surviving bodyguard shouted. "No," Thaddeus called back, reloading. "I killed a heretic." The bodyguard leaned out to return fire. Thaddeus put a slug through his chest before the man could pull the trigger. The body slumped forward and didn't move again. Silence filled the cathedral. Thaddeus stood up, brushed marble dust off his black coat, and walked to where Marcus Gellhorn lay bleeding out on the altar steps. The former priest's eyes were still open, still conscious. "The 4 rules," Gellhorn whispered. "You know them, don't you?" Thaddeus nodded. Every executioner learned the rules on their first day. Rule 1. The target must be guilty of heresy against the church. Rule 2. The execution must take place on holy ground. Rule 3. The executioner must witness the target's final breath. Rule 4. The executioner must never question the order's judgment. "I followed them," Gellhorn continued, blood trickling from his mouth. "I followed all 4 rules when I killed my targets, just like you. You were selling drugs, not performing executions." "Was I?" Gellhorn smiled. "Check your phone, Kane. Check the message you received 20 minutes before you came here." Thaddeus pulled out his encrypted device. One new message from command. He opened it. Target: Marcus Gellhorn, former executioner 3rd class. Charge: unauthorized executions. Location: St. Catherine's Cathedral. Execute immediately. Former executioner. Thaddeus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He looked down at Gellhorn, who was still smiling. "How many?" Thaddeus asked. 63 holy executions, Gellhorn replied. "All drug dealers, all performed on holy ground, all witnessed to completion. I followed the rules perfectly, Kane, just like you're following them now. The order didn't authorize your executions. Rule 4 says never question the order's judgment. It doesn't say the order has to authorize everything we do." Gellhorn coughed up more blood. "I was cleaning up the streets, making the world holy again, and they sent you to kill me for it." Thaddeus knelt beside the dying man. "What are you trying to tell me?" "The rules work both ways," Gellhorn whispered. "You can use them to serve the order, or you can use them to serve God directly. I chose God, and now I'm about to die for it." Gellhorn's breathing stopped. His eyes went blank. Thaddeus watched for 30 seconds to make sure, then stood up. Rule 3 complete. The execution was finished, but something felt different this time. Gellhorn's words echoed in his mind as he walked toward the cathedral exit. 63 executions. All unauthorized. All perfectly legal according to the 4 rules. Thaddeus had never questioned an assignment before. Rule 4 was clear about that. But as he stepped over the bodies of Gellhorn's bodyguards, he found himself wondering about his other targets. Had they all been real heretics? Or had some of them been like Gellhorn, executioners who'd gone rogue? His phone buzzed. New message from command. Excellent work. Return to base for debriefing. New target assignment. Waiting. Thaddeus climbed into his black sedan and drove through the city streets. The Order's headquarters was a glass office building downtown, completely ordinary looking from the outside. Inside, it housed the most efficient religious killing machine in human history. The Order had been operating for over 200 years, quietly removing threats to the Church's authority. Thaddeus had joined them 5 years ago after his discharge from Marine Force Recon. The work suited him. Clean kills, clear objectives, no moral ambiguity. Heretics died, the Church remained pure, everyone went home happy. But Gellhorn's words had planted a seed of doubt. He parked in the underground garage and took the elevator to the 20th floor. Commander Yates was waiting in the briefing room, a stern woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes. She'd run the Order's operations for the past decade. "Kane," she said as he entered, "sit down." Thaddeus took a chair across from her. "Gellhorn is dead. Execution completed, according to protocol." "I know. I watched the whole thing through satellite feed." Yates slid a manila folder across the table. "Your next assignment." Thaddeus opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a man in his 30s with dark hair and tired eyes. The name at the bottom read, Vincent Torres, Executioner 2nd Class. "Another executioner?" Thaddeus asked. "Former executioner," Yates corrected. "Torres went missing 3 weeks ago. We've tracked him to a monastery outside the city. He's been performing unauthorized executions on the monks there." "How many?" "All of them. 26 monks, dead. Torres claims they were practicing forbidden rituals, but we have no evidence of heretical activity. He's killed innocent people, Kane. We need him stopped." Thaddeus studied the photograph. Vincent Torres looked familiar. He'd seen the man around headquarters, but they'd never worked together. "What's his background?" 10 years with the Order. 98 confirmed executions, all authorized. Perfect record until 3 weeks ago. Yates leaned forward. "Something happened to him, Kane. We think he might have suffered a psychological break, started seeing heretics where none existed. And you want me to execute him. I want you to bring him to justice. Rule 1 applies here. Torres is guilty of heresy through his unauthorized killings. The monastery is holy ground, so Rule 2 is satisfied. You'll witness his death according to Rule 3, and Rule 4 means you don't question these orders." Thaddeus closed the folder. "Understood. One more thing," Yates said. "Torres knows you're coming. He sent us a message yesterday, said he's waiting for you at the monastery. He wants to show you something." "Show me what?" "He didn't say. But Kane, I need you to focus on the mission. Don't let Torres get inside your head. He's dangerous, unstable. Kill him quickly and get out." Thaddeus nodded and stood up. "When do I leave?" "Now. A helicopter is waiting on the roof." The flight to St. Gabriel's Monastery took 40 minutes. Thaddeus spent the time checking his weapons and reviewing the building plans. The monastery was old, built in the 1800s, with thick stone walls and narrow corridors. If Torres had set up defenses, it would be a tough fight. The pilot set them down in a field half a mile from the monastery. Thaddeus grabbed his gear bag and approached the building on foot. Everything looked normal from the outside. No signs of violence, no bodies, no blood. But the place felt empty. Dead. The front gate was unlocked. Thaddeus pushed it open and stepped into the courtyard. Still no sign of Torres or the dead monks. Maybe Yates had been wrong about the location. Then he heard singing. The sound came from the chapel, a beautiful Latin hymn echoing off stone walls. Thaddeus drew his pistol and moved toward the music. The chapel door stood open. Inside, he could see rows of wooden benches and a simple altar. Vincent Torres sat in the front pew, still singing. He wore his black executioner's coat, but no weapons were visible. As Thaddeus entered the chapel, Torres finished the hymn and turned around. "Cain," he said, "right on time. Where are the monks?" "Dead, all 26 of them." Torres stood up and faced him. "Would you like to see the bodies?" "Yates said you killed them for practicing forbidden rituals." "Yates told you I was crazy, that I'd suffered a psychological break." Torres smiled. "Did she mention that I'd found something here? Something the Order doesn't want you to know about?" Thaddeus kept his pistol trained on Torres. "What are you talking about?" "Follow me." Torres walked toward a side door near the altar. Against his better judgment, Thaddeus followed. The door opened onto a stone staircase leading down into the monastery's basement. Torres descended slowly, his hands visible. The basement was a maze of storage rooms and wine cellars. Torres led him to the far end, where a heavy wooden door stood slightly open. Light flickered beyond it. "In here," Torres said. Thaddeus pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room beyond was large, circular, with stone walls covered in carved symbols. 26 bodies lay arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. All wore monks' robes. All had been shot once in the head. But that wasn't what made Thaddeus stop breathing. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Pictures of men and women, all with names and dates written beneath. Thaddeus recognized some of the faces. They were his targets. People he'd executed over the past 5 years. "Welcome to the Order's real headquarters," Torres said behind him. "This is where they keep track of their work." Thaddeus stepped closer to the wall. Each photograph had detailed information: name, age, occupation, date of death, and the name of the executioner who'd killed them. He found his own name attached to 47 different photos. "These people weren't heretics," Torres continued. "They were threats to the Order's power, politicians who asked too many questions, journalists who got too close to the truth, businessmen who refused to cooperate. The Order has been using us to eliminate anyone who might expose them." Thaddeus found a photo that made his blood freeze. It showed a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. The name beneath read, Sarah Martinez, age 43, occupation, federal investigator, executed by Thaddeus Cain. He remembered the execution. Command had told him Sarah Martinez was a heretic who'd been infiltrating Catholic churches to steal sacred artifacts. He'd shot her in the basement of St. Mary's Church in Philadelphia. She died begging him to listen, trying to tell him something about the Order. "She was investigating us," Torres said, reading over his shoulder. "Getting close to the truth about what we really do. So they sent you to kill her." Thaddeus stared at the photograph. Sarah Martinez had children. He remembered seeing their pictures in her wallet when he'd searched the body. 2 teenage kids who would never see their mother again. "How long have you known?" he asked. 3 weeks. "I came here following orders to execute Brother Michael, the monastery's abbot. Command said he was performing black masses, summoning demons. But when I got here, I found this room. Brother Michael showed it to me. He'd been documenting the Order's activities for years, trying to expose them. So you killed him anyway?" "I killed all of them," Torres confirmed. "Because Brother Michael asked me to." Thaddeus turned around. "What?" He knew someone would come eventually. The Order doesn't leave loose ends. So Brother Michael and the other monks decided to die as martyrs. They wanted their deaths to serve a purpose. To wake up the next executioner who came here. Torres pointed to the photos on the wall. Every single person in these pictures was innocent. Good people trying to do the right thing. And we killed them because we followed the 4 rules without question. Thaddeus felt something cracking inside his chest. 5 years of perfect service. 47 executions. All lies. "What do you want from me?" he asked. I want you to help me finish what Brother Michael started." Torres walked to a desk in the corner and picked up a thick folder. "These are copies of all the order's records. Every execution, every cover-up, every lie they've told us. Brother Michael was going to send them to the FBI, but he died before he could act. You want me to betray the order. I want you to serve God instead of serving killers." Torres held out the folder. "The 4 rules still apply, Kane. But we can use them to execute the real heretics. The people who've been using us to murder innocents." Thaddeus took the folder and opened it. Inside were hundreds of documents detailing the order's operations. Financial records, correspondence, target lists, execution reports. Everything needed to destroy the organization. "Rule 4 says never question the order's judgment," he said. "Rule 4 says never question judgment," Torres corrected. "It doesn't specify whose judgment. Brother Michael believed we answer to a higher authority than Commander Yates." Thaddeus closed the folder. Outside, he could hear the sound of helicopters approaching. Multiple aircraft, coming fast. "They're here," Torres said. "Yates probably had you followed. She knew you'd find the truth eventually." "How many? Does it matter? We're not leaving this place alive anyway." Torres drew his sidearm and checked the magazine. "But we can make sure these documents survive. There's a tunnel in the wine cellar that leads to the village. Brother Michael used it to smuggle refugees during World War II." The helicopter sounds grew louder. Thaddeus counted at least 4 aircraft, probably carrying a full strike team. The order wasn't taking any chances. "Give me the folder," he said. Torres handed it over. "You're really going to do this?" "Rule 1, Thaddeus replied, tucking the documents inside his coat. "The target must be guilty of heresy against the church. Commander Yates and her people qualify." They moved quickly through the basement toward the wine cellar. Behind them, Thaddeus could hear boots on the stairs. The strike team had entered the monastery. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a rack of wine bottles. Torres pulled the rack aside, revealing a narrow passage that sloped downward into darkness. They crawled through on hands and knees, moving as fast as possible. Behind them, shouts echoed through the basement. The strike team had found the circular room and the photographs. They'd be searching for the tunnel entrance within minutes. The passage opened into a cave system beneath the monastery. Torres led the way, using a small flashlight, navigating by memory through twisting corridors of natural stone. They could hear explosions above as the strike team blew open the tunnel entrance. "How much farther?" Thaddeus asked. "Maybe half a mile. The caves connect to an old mine shaft that comes up near the village church." They ran through the underground maze while their pursuers followed behind. Thaddeus could hear voices in the distance, getting closer. The strike team was good, but they didn't know the cave system like Torres did. 20 minutes later, they reached a rusted iron ladder leading up through a vertical shaft. Torres climbed first, then Thaddeus. They emerged inside a small stone building that turned out to be the bell tower of the village church. "Now what?" Thaddeus asked. "Now we use the documents," Torres replied. "Brother Michael had contacts in the FBI, people who've been investigating the order for years. We get the folder to them, and they'll handle the rest." They descended from the bell tower into the church proper. It was empty except for an elderly priest kneeling before the altar. The man looked up as they approached. "Father Santos," Torres said, "we need your help." The priest stood up slowly. He was in his 70s with white hair and gentle eyes. "Vincent, I wondered when you'd return. This is Thaddeus Kane. He's going to help us finish Brother Michael's work." Father Santos nodded. "The FBI agents are waiting in the rectory. They've been here since yesterday." They followed the priest through a side door into a small house behind the church. 2 people sat at the kitchen table. A woman in her 30s with short blonde hair and a man about Thaddeus's age wearing a rumpled suit. "Special Agent Rita Campos," the woman said, standing up. "This is Agent David Kim. We've been waiting to hear from you." Torres handed over a copy of the documents. "Everything's in there. Financial records, target lists, execution videos, enough to bring down the entire order." Agent Campos flipped through the folder. "This is incredible. We've been investigating them for 3 years, but we could never get solid evidence. This changes everything." "How long before you can act?" Thaddeus asked. "We're ready now," Agent Kim replied. "We have arrest warrants prepared for Commander Yates and 12 other high-ranking order members. SWAT teams are standing by in 6 different cities." "What about us?" Torres asked. "You'll both need to testify," Agent Campos said. "But we can offer full immunity in exchange for your cooperation. The government understands that you were following orders." Thaddeus thought about Sarah Martinez and her children. About 46 other innocent people he'd killed because he'd trusted the wrong authority. Immunity felt like cheating. "I want to do more than testify," he said. "What do you mean?" "The order has safe houses around the world, hidden assets, backup operatives. You'll need someone who knows their methods to help track them down." Agent Campos nodded. "We'd welcome that assistance." Torres pulled out his phone and showed them a message. "Commander Yates just sent this. She's ordering all remaining executioners to go underground until the situation at the monastery is resolved. They're scattered, but I know where some of them are hiding." "Then let's go find them," Agent Kim said. Over the next 6 hours, the FBI arrested 43 order members across the United States. Commander Yates was taken into custody at the Chicago safe house, where she'd been coordinating the search for Torres and Thaddeus. Her last words before being read, her rights were a quote from Rule 4. "Never question judgment." The raids netted hundreds of additional documents, enough evidence to prosecute the order's leadership and expose their operations to the public. The story broke on every major news network within hours. Religious authorities worldwide condemned the organization and pledged to cooperate with the investigation. Thaddeus spent the following months working with federal agents to track down the order's international branches. They found operations in 12 countries, all following the same pattern of murdering innocent people under the guise of religious duty. Vincent Torres testified before Congress about the psychological conditioning that had allowed the order to manipulate their executioners. His testimony led to new laws regulating private military contractors and religious organizations. 6 months after the monastery raid, Thaddeus stood in the cemetery where Sarah Martinez was buried. He'd brought flowers and a letter of apology to leave on her grave. Her children had agreed to meet him there. "She would have forgiven you," her daughter said. She was 16, with her mother's kind eyes. "Mom always said people could change if they wanted to badly enough." "I can't bring her back," Thaddeus replied. "No," the girl agreed. "But you can make sure this never happens to anyone else." That had become his new mission. Thaddeus now worked for a joint FBI-Interpol task force dedicated to hunting down religious extremist organizations. He used the same skills that had made him an effective executioner, but now he served justice instead of lies. The 4 rules still guided his actions, but with different meanings. Rule 1. The target must be truly guilty, not just inconvenient to powerful people. Rule 2. Justice must be served in the light, not hidden in secret operations. Rule 3. He would witness the consequences of his actions and never forget the cost of violence. Rule 4. Never question his duty to protect the innocent. Vincent Torres had been right about one thing. The rules worked both ways. They could be used to serve God, or they could be used to serve killers. The choice belonged to the person following them. Thaddeus had made his choice, and for the first time in years, he could sleep without seeing the faces of innocent people in his dreams. The order was finished. Their executioners were either dead, imprisoned, or working to undo the damage they'd caused. Brother Michael's sacrifice had not been in vain. The 4 rules had finally led to justice. 3 years later, Thaddeus Kane stood outside a maximum security prison in Colorado, waiting for Vincent Torres to be released. Torres had served 36 months for his role in the monastery killings, despite his cooperation with federal authorities. The families of the monks had requested leniency, understanding that their loved ones had chosen martyrdom to expose the order's crimes. The gates opened at exactly 9 a.m. Torres emerged wearing civilian clothes and carrying a small duffel bag. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes held a peace that hadn't been there during their underground days. "Kane," he said, shaking hands, "thanks for coming. Where will you go now?" "Father Santos offered me a job at his church, maintenance work, nothing fancy, but honest work." Torres smiled. "What about you? Still hunting down the order's remnants?" "Most of them are finished. The FBI task force is being dissolved next month." Thaddeus walked with Torres toward the parking lot. "I've been thinking about what comes next. And there are other organizations out there, groups that use religion to justify murder, just like the Order did. Someone needs to stop them." Torres nodded. "The 4 rules again? The 4 rules again, but this time we write them ourselves." They reached Thaddeus's car, a simple sedan that had replaced his old government vehicle. Before getting in, Torres turned back toward the prison. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Bringing down the order? Sometimes I wonder if we just created a power vacuum for something worse to fill." "No," Thaddeus said. "Evil doesn't get better when you ignore it. It just gets better at hiding." Torres climbed into the passenger seat. "So, what's our first target?" "There's a cult in Oregon. They call themselves the Divine Flame. Been sacrificing runaway teenagers and calling it religious purification. Local police can't touch them because they own half the town government." "Sounds familiar." "The FBI can't move without more evidence, but 2 former executioners might be able to get close enough to gather what's needed." Torres was quiet for several miles as they drove through the Colorado mountains. Finally, he spoke again. "What are the new rules?" Thaddeus had been thinking about this for months. The original 4 rules had been designed to control executioners, to make them follow orders without question. His new rules would be different. Rule 1. Never kill unless it's the only way to save innocent lives. Rule 2. Always gather proof before taking action. Rule 3. Face the consequences of your choices, no matter how difficult. Rule 4. Remember that justice serves the victims, not the people in power. "Those are good rules," Torres said, "but who decides when they apply?" "We do, together. No more taking orders from commanders or organizations. We investigate, we judge, we act, and we live with the results." The Divine Flame compound was located in the Oregon wilderness, 40 miles from the nearest town. Intelligence reports indicated they had approximately 60 members, including 15 children between the ages of 12 and 17. All of the children had been reported missing by their families in other states. Local sheriff's deputies had visited the compound twice in the past year, but both times they'd been turned away by lawyers who claimed the children were there voluntarily. Without evidence of abuse, law enforcement couldn't justify a raid. Thaddeus and Torres spent a week observing the compound from hidden positions in the surrounding forest. They documented the daily routines, counted personnel, and identified security measures. The cult leaders were paranoid but not professional. Their guards carried hunting rifles instead of military weapons, and they relied more on isolation than actual defenses. On the 7th night, they watched through binoculars as a teenage girl was dragged from one of the dormitory buildings toward a stone altar in the center of the compound. She was fighting, screaming, but the guards forced her forward anyway. "Tonight," Torres whispered. They moved through the darkness using skills learned during their executioner training. The perimeter guards never saw them coming. Thaddeus and Torres disabled 6 men without firing a shot, using sleeper holds and pressure points to render them unconscious. The main building housed the cult's leadership, Prophet Marcus Divine, and his 12 apostles. They were gathered around the stone altar, chanting while the teenage girl lay bound in front of them. Divine held a curved knife above his head, preparing to begin the sacrifice. Thaddeus kicked in the front door while Torres entered through the back. The apostles reached for weapons, but neither man was in a forgiving mood. They moved through the cultists like a surgical strike, disabling threats and protecting the girl. Prophet Divine tried to complete the sacrifice even as chaos erupted around him. He brought the knife down toward the girl's chest, but Thaddeus caught his wrist and twisted until bones snapped. The knife clattered to the floor. "Rule 1, Thaddeus said, pressing his pistol against Divine's temple. "Never kill unless it's the only way to save innocent lives." "You're interrupting God's work," Divine gasped. "No," Torres said, freeing the girl from her bonds. "We're finishing it." They zip-tied the cult leaders and called the FBI using a satellite phone. While waiting for backup to arrive, they searched the compound for evidence. What they found in Divine's private quarters made both men sick. Photo albums filled with pictures of previous sacrifices, detailed records of how each child had died, video recordings of the murders, carefully preserved for Divine's personal enjoyment, and a ledger showing payments from wealthy donors who'd paid to watch the killings via live video feed. "This wasn't just a cult," Torres said, flipping through the ledger. "It was a business. They were selling murder as entertainment." The FBI arrived at dawn with a convoy of vehicles and a medical team for the surviving children. Special Agent Campos, now promoted to section chief, supervised the arrest of all adult cult members. "How many victims?" she asked, reviewing the evidence they'd collected. "At least 37 children over the past 5 years, Thaddeus replied. "The families need to be notified." "We'll handle that. What about you two? Ready to make this official?" Torres and Thaddeus exchanged glances. They'd been discussing the possibility of joining the FBI as special consultants, using their unique skills to hunt down religious extremist groups. "We work together," Torres said. "Equal partners, not subordinates." "And we choose our own targets," Thaddeus added. "No political interference, no protecting connected suspects." Agent Campos nodded. "I can live with those conditions. Welcome to the team." Over the next 2 years, they dismantled 14 different extremist organizations across North America. Each operation followed the same pattern: careful investigation, gathering of evidence, and surgical intervention when law enforcement couldn't act quickly enough. They saved 68 children from various cults and ritual abuse groups. They prevented dozens of planned terrorist attacks disguised as religious ceremonies, and they put hundreds of criminals behind bars who had previously hidden behind religious authority. The work was dangerous, often thankless, and sometimes morally ambiguous. But it was honest work, guided by rules they'd chosen themselves rather than orders from corrupt commanders. Their reputation spread through the underground networks of religious extremists. Some groups disbanded rather than risk facing the 2 former executioners. Others tried to fight back, leading to running gun battles in remote compounds and abandoned churches. Thaddeus kept a photo in his wallet. Sarah Martinez with her children, taken before he'd murdered her. He looked at it before every operation, reminding himself why the rules mattered. Justice wasn't about following orders or serving organizations. It was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The final confrontation came in a warehouse outside Detroit. A group called the Purification Army had been kidnapping homeless veterans and forcing them to fight to the death in gladiatorial combat. The survivors were then recruited as soldiers for the group's planned assault on a VA hospital. Intelligence indicated they had 40 hostages and were planning to attack within hours. Local SWAT teams were still 30 minutes away, too late to prevent the massacre. "Rule 2, Torres said as they approached the warehouse. "Always gather proof before taking action." They'd been watching the group for 3 days. documenting everything. Video evidence of the forced combat, financial records showing wealthy donors paying to watch, and communications proving the planned hospital attack. There was no question about guilt. The warehouse was heavily defended with automatic weapons and military-grade equipment. Unlike the amateur cultists they'd faced before, these men were trained soldiers who'd been kicked out of the military for various crimes. Thaddeus and Torres entered through the skylight, rappelling down into the main floor where the gladiatorial combat was taking place. 40 wealthy spectators sat in bleachers around a makeshift arena, watching two homeless veterans fight with knives while guards ensured neither man could escape. "Federal agents," Thaddeus announced, dropping into the arena with his rifle ready. "Everyone on the ground now." The spectators screamed and dove for cover. The guards opened fire, forcing Thaddeus to roll behind a concrete barrier. Torres came down firing, taking out 3 gunmen before his feet touched the floor. The battle was vicious and brief. The Purification Army had superior numbers and firepower, but Thaddeus and Torres had superior training and motivation. They moved through the warehouse like a precision instrument, eliminating threats while protecting the hostages. When the shooting stopped, 37 criminals lay dead or wounded. All 40 hostages survived. The 2 homeless veterans who'd been forced to fight each other instead turned their knives on their captors, helping to end the battle. "Rule 3, Thaddeus said as paramedics treated the wounded hostages. "Face the consequences of your choices." He looked around the warehouse at the bodies of men he'd killed. Some had been soldiers once, before they'd chosen to become monsters. Others had been wealthy civilians who'd paid to watch human suffering. All had made choices that led them here. Thaddeus felt no guilt about their deaths, but he acknowledged the weight of taking life. Each kill was a permanent decision, irreversible and absolute. The rules helped him carry that weight, but they couldn't eliminate it entirely. "Rule 4, Torres added, watching the hostages being evacuated. "Remember that justice serves the victims, not the people in power." The homeless veterans would receive proper medical care and psychological counseling. The wealthy spectators who'd survived would face federal charges for human trafficking and conspiracy to commit murder. The warehouse would be torn down and replaced with low-income housing. Justice had been served, but the cost had been high. 37 human beings were dead, their potential for redemption lost forever. That was the price of stopping monsters, and both men accepted it. 6 months later, Agent Campos called them into her office for a final briefing. The religious extremist task force was being shut down, its mission largely completed. Most of the major groups had been eliminated or driven underground, and new legislation made it harder for such organizations to operate. "What's next for you two?" she asked. "There's still work to do," Thaddeus replied. "International groups, human traffickers, corporate cults. Evil doesn't respect borders." "The rules still apply," Torres added. "As long as there are innocent people who need protection, we'll be there." Agent Campos handed them new credentials and a substantial operational budget. "These authorize you to work anywhere in the world. Consider yourselves freelance agents of justice." They spent the following years traveling between countries, hunting down the worst examples of humanity and bringing them to justice. They worked with local law enforcement when possible, operated independently when necessary. In Thailand, they rescued 50 children from a monastery where the monks had been selling them to sex traffickers. In Colombia, they destroyed a drug cartel that had been using Catholic imagery to intimidate victims. In Romania, they shut down a fake religious retreat that was actually a front for organ harvesting. The 4 rules guided every operation. Innocent lives came first, evidence was always gathered, consequences were accepted, and justice served the victims rather than the powerful. Simple principles that had taken years to understand properly. On his 50th birthday, Thaddeus stood in the cemetery where Sarah Martinez was buried. He'd visited her grave every year since exposing the order, leaving flowers and updating her children on his work. They were adults now, both pursuing careers in law enforcement inspired by their mother's sacrifice. Vincent Torres joined him at the graveside, carrying a bouquet of white roses. 15 years, he said. Think we've made up for what we did? No, Thaddeus replied honestly. We can't bring back the people we killed when we were following the wrong rules, but we can make sure their deaths have meaning. How many lives have we saved? Lost count. Hundreds, maybe thousands, but it's not about the numbers. Thaddeus knelt and placed his flowers on Sarah's grave. It's about choosing to serve justice instead of serving power. Torres placed his roses beside them. The 4 rules? The 4 rules, Thaddeus confirmed. Rule 1. Never kill unless it's the only way to save innocent lives. Rule 2. Always gather proof before taking action. Rule 3. Face the consequences of your choices, no matter how difficult. Rule 4. Remember that justice serves the victims, not the people in power. They stood in silence for several minutes, honoring the memory of a woman whose death had changed both their lives. Then they walked back to their car, ready to continue their work. There would always be monsters in the world, people who used religion or ideology to justify hurting others. But there would also always be people willing to stop them, guided by rules that serve justice rather than convenience. Thaddeus Kane and Vincent Torres had found their purpose in life. They were witnesses to holy executions, but now they chose who lived and who died based on principles they'd learned through blood and sacrifice. The rules worked when applied correctly, and they would keep working as long as good people were willing to follow them, no matter the cost. In the end, that was enough. Justice served, innocent lives protected, and the memory of the dead honored through action rather than words. The 4 rules had finally led them home.